Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 10 episodes of Stargate SG-1. In this video, I will count down my top 10 favorite episodes as well as my bottom 5 least favorite episodes from Stargate SG-1. So I have to give a spoiler warning for all of Stargate SG-1. If you haven't seen all of the series, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So, it's been a while since I did one of these episode top 10 videos, and that's because I like to watch the show in question before I do one of these, and it took me a long time to get through this one as it's 10 seasons of roughly 23 episodes per season. Although I did cheat, and instead of watching every single episode, I selected my favorite 10 to 12 episodes from each season from memory, as I have seen this show several times before and just watched those. But even so, it took me over 7 months to get through it all because I have been abnormally busy this year with all the recent episode reviews and other things going on with my life. But that slowed me down a bit, and now with this hurdle out of the way, I might be able to get to more of these episode top 10 videos of some of my older favorite shows. So let's get into Stargate SG-1, starting with my 5 least favorite episodes of Stargate SG-1, starting with my number 5, The First Commandment. This first season episode is where another SG team goes crazy for no good reason, and a perfectly respectable military officer turns into a villain who goes around killing people and acting like a god for no good reason. This is the kind of crap the show would go through on their first season before it found its footing. Number 4 is Tangent, the 4th season episode where O'Neill and Teal'c test drive a Goa'uld fighter that's been retrofitted by the Air Force but become trapped when a pre-programmed virus from Apophis takes over and flies them into space where they could die. This episode was just boring and cliched as they test fly a piece of technology that goes wrong and tries to kill them, a story that I've seen a million times before, and this episode doesn't even attempt to offer anything new. Number 3 is Family Ties, the 10th season episode where Vala Maldoran's father enters the picture and turns out he's a scheming, no-good con artist. Wow, what a shock. I never liked Vala that much, as she was definitely my least favorite character who was ever a main cast member on SG-1, and seeing this episode where they got the second-rate actor to play an older male version of her was just so painful to watch. I simply could not bear to watch this episode again. Number 2 is The Changeling, the 6th season episode where Teal'c is suddenly a human firefighter with his friend Jonas and his chief O'Neill. Turns out it's all an illusion that Teal'c suffers as he loses his symbiont and is dying. I never liked it when SG-1 tried to make alien characters be in real-life contemporary settings, while this episode, in my opinion, is the worst and was just painfully boring as Teal'c acted like a firefighter, and the explanation they tried to give for these visions were so contrived and unbelievable. I would have to say this is the show at its worst. And my number 1 worst episode of Stargate SG-1 is Emancipation, which was the 3rd episode of the entire series back in season 1. Those familiar with Star Trek Next Generation may know of the episode Code of Honor, which was the 3rd episode of that show, and how it was one of the worst of the series. Well, Emancipation was the SG-1's version of that episode, where they gate to a world of mongrels who abduct Samantha Carter, and the leader tries to marry her, so she has to prove her worth as a woman, while the rest of SG-1 strive to save her. Talk about an episode that's painful to watch. This one was just horribly bad and cliched and just very sloppy, lazy writing, making it my number 1 worst episode of Stargate SG-1. So now let me turn more positively, but before I get into my top 10, let me just name a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make my top 10. First honorable mention is Maternal Instinct, the 3rd season episode where SG-1 finds Keb, the planet they've been searching for to try to find the son of Daniel's deceased wife, the Harcesis, that holds the key to defeating the Goa'uld, but instead encounter a Buddhist-type monk who is very powerful and seems to have abilities that they don't understand, and is also very cryptic. Next honorable mention is the Sentinel, the 5th season episode where SG-1 has to work with a couple of NID outlaws to try to fix a piece of equipment that they stole from a planet of innocent villagers, as it was a weapon that protected them from the Goa'uld, and without that, the people of the planet face being conquered by the Goa'uld unless SG-1 can work with these untrustworthy outlaws to fix the weapon. And my final honorable mention is 2010, the 4th season episode that takes place in an alternate future where Earth has allied with an alien race known as the Ashen that have defeated the Goa'uld and cured all disease on Earth, and Earth is now fully aware of the Stargate program and alien life. However, Sam uncovers a plot by the Ashen to slowly kill off and enslave Earth, and she soon discovers there's no way to stop their plot other than going back in time and preventing it from ever happening. So now let me get to my top 10 favorite episodes, starting with my number 10, The Quest. This 10th season two-parter marks my favorite use of the Ori, as I wasn't a huge fan of this storyline. However, these episodes we get a quest for the Holy Grail, and it's really a Holy Grail type quest where SG-1 is forced to team up with Ball and the Orsi to overcome a series of King Arthur type tests to get to the Holy Grail, which in this case is a weapon capable of destroying the Ori. It's funny, during the whole episode I kept singing the song, "We're Knights of the Round Table." Of course, that was just the first part. In the second part, we got a story of Daniel Jackson finally becoming the one to touch the ancient depository, but instead of getting the entire knowledge of the ancients that O'Neill did in the past, he is injected with the consciousness of Merlin, and then had to race against time to finish this weapon before the Orsi caught up to them. It was quite an exciting and effective story. Number 9 is Show and Tell, the 2nd season episode where Stargate Command is visited by a strange young boy who claims to have an invisible mother. At first, they think he's crazy until she blows something up. They then learn that the boy is a human clone created by a strange alien race known as the Ritu that exists outside of the visual spectrum for most humanoids, and was sent to Stargate Command to protect them from attack from other rebel Ritus. This was quite a suspenseful episode where Stargate Command is forced to attack an invisible enemy and making them quite a formidable foe indeed. But more than that, we get the relationship between Jack and a young boy whom he names Charlie, which was quite touching as well. Number 8 is Touchstone, the 2nd season episode where, after returning to a planet that has a device capable of controlling the weather, they find that the device has been stolen and are accused of stealing it. After convincing the natives to let them go, they search for the device and are up against the clock, as without the device the planet's weather goes haywire and the natives won't be able to survive. They soon discover it was a group of rogue NID agents using the second Stargate that they stole, and they used it to steal the device, and then so SG-1 must use all of their tricks to track them down. This was a really great ticking clock episode and our first introduction to the rogue NID elements that tried to undermine SG-1. Everything about this episode just worked to serve the story, as you were genuinely worried about the people freezing to death, and as SG-1 felt responsible for what was happening, so it was so great to see them gain redemption by tracking down these assholes who took it. Number 7 is Absolute Power, the 4th season episode where the Harcesis presents himself as a 10-year-old boy despite being only a year old. He has been raised by Uma Dasela and thus has a cryptic way of talking. The knowledge of the Goa'uld that SG-1 seeks has been suppressed for his own good, and when Daniel presses him for it, he presents him with what we later learn is a vision where Daniel gains the knowledge of the Goa'uld and uses it to defeat them. However, it doesn't stop there. He goes mad with power and uses his new super weapon to take over the world. While having a story on how absolute power corrupts absolutely is nothing new, I thought it was executed absolutely brilliantly here, as it was so great to see a scenario in which Daniel Jackson goes mad with power and uses a super weapon to destroy Moscow, and it was executed in a way that you totally bought. And I love Daniel's reaction after he receives this vision, where he realizes why they have to simply let this knowledge go, because it would destroy them. It was such a powerful story. Number 6 is Summit and the Last Stand, the 5th season two-parter where Daniel Jackson is sent on another undercover mission by the Tok'ra to infiltrate a meeting of all of the Goa'uld system lords so he can kill them all with symbiote poisoning. However, the mission goes awry when they learn an even more powerful Goa'uld named Anubis, who isn't there, is out there wreaking havoc. Meanwhile, the rest of SG-1 is on a Tok'ra base when it becomes under attack by Anubis. There were 2 super intense episodes where Daniel Jackson was literally surrounded by the enemy and at danger surround him at every turn. It was also interesting seeing Daniel come face to face with Osiris, the Goa'uld inhabiting his longtime friend Sarah, and the conundrum that put him in, as Osiris wants to kill him, but he wants to save her. Meanwhile, the Tok'ra face total annihilation, where SG-1 barely makes it out of there alive. Number 5 is Reckoning, the 8th season 2-part episode that saw most epic of epic battles, where the worst case scenario plays out, where the replicators invade the Milky Way with an eye on taking over the Goa'uld. The Jaffa Rebellion seizes the opportunity to rid themselves of the Goa'uld by seizing control of a sacred ancient city that would unite all Jaffa against the Goa'uld. Meanwhile, SG-1 learns that Anubis is still alive and wishes to use the device on the same city to wipe out all life in the galaxy. However, Jacob and Samantha Carter get to it first and use it to defeat the replicators once and for all, while at the same time defeating the Goa'uld. So, this is the episode that changed the face of the show, as we finally defeated the 2 major enemies at the same time. While some of the Goa'uld, like Baal, still got away to wreak havoc for another day, the overall system lords were defeated, and it was pulled off in a super exciting way, with Stargate Command on the brink of destruction by the replicators, while Teal'c struggled to hold Chikara, and Sam struggled to get the ancient device to work, and Daniel Jackson dealt with the Carter replicator and used his cleverness to trick her. Each member of SG-1 had their own story that was equally as exciting, making this a unique, one-of-a-kind episode. Number 4 is Unending, the final episode of the series, where after witnessing the death of the Asgard and gaining all of their knowledge, SG-1, while on the Odyssey, find themselves under attack by the Ori, who apparently can track them wherever they go, and all of the crew except for General Landry and SG-1 evacuates the ship, and they remain, and they face imminent destruction from the Ori, who fires at them. So Carter uses a time dilation device to freeze time, so to prevent their destruction until they can find a way to disconnect the Asgard depository, which the Ori can track from the main computer. It literally takes her 50 years to do this, in which time SG-1 has grown old. However, they use a device to reverse time so that they can enact the plan before the time dilation device is ever activated. So at first I didn't think too highly of this episode, as it wasn't what I expected from the series finale of Stargate, as typically a show like this would have an epic 2-hour episode with space battles that would resolve all the overarching storylines, but instead this was a quiet character story that resolved nothing. It was done this way because they were planning the TV movie The Arc of Truth to resolve the Ori storyline, but looking back on it, I feel I misjudged this episode and feel it was actually quite powerful and a fitting way to end the series, especially considering The Arc of Truth wasn't that good. Here we got to see SG-1 literally grow old together, trapped in time on a ship with an energy weapon moments away from destroying them, but frozen for 50 years. It brought out great character moments as SG-1 actually had to deal with each other as people rather than having to run around to a different emergency every 5 seconds, which led to some really great character stories all around. In the montage they had with Creedence Clearwater Revival's Have You Ever Seen the Rain was an amazing montage, one of the best I've ever seen, especially when Cam loses his mind and starts trashing his room. Such an amazing scene. I can't think about this episode without humming that song, as it was used so well here. So this may be not the best finale because it more wraps up seasons 9 and 10 rather than wrapping up the whole series, but judging it as an episode in its own right, it was quite amazing. Number 3 is Singularity, the first season episode where SG-1 gates to a planet to find the SG team and all the natives dead from an unknown disease and find one lone survivor, a young girl. They take her back to base where she forms a bond with Sam. While Jack and Teal'c investigate the planet, they soon discover the inhabitants were killed off by the Goa'uld Nearity, who used this to plant a bomb in the little girl to destroy the Stargate. So when they get this absolutely harrowing scene where Sam takes the girl deep underground so the bomb can go off without harming anyone else, and it was such a heartbreaking scene, seeing Sam crying because she knew there was nothing she could do to save the life of this little girl whom she bonded with. However, Sam defies orders and goes back to be with her, but when the bomb is meant to go off, nothing happens. They then learn the bomb reacted to the Stargate, and by taking her far enough away from the Stargate, it deactivated the bomb. So this episode starts off as a normal Stargate episode, but the ending was some of the biggest tear-jerking scenes I've ever seen, and was so emotionally powerful because it was played off so well, as you really did get to know Cassandra and empathize with her, and seeing Sam being forced to leave her for dead is about as tragic as you can get. However, it does take you to a happy place in the end where her life is saved after all, and I do think that this was the right thing to do because it would have been way too dark had she did actually die. So overall, an amazing episode. Number 2 is Window of Opportunity, the 4th season episode while visiting a planet where an archaeologist from another world is studying a strange ancient device. A strange electromagnetic event occurs that Teal'c and O'Neill get caught in. They then find themselves repeating the same day over and over again, as the device apparently created a time loop. They soon discover the other archaeologist caused the time loop and set up a force field to prevent them from stopping it. So, in all honesty, I think this is my favorite time loop story ever, or at least one of them, as I was totally blown away by how well this was pulled off. As it's very easy for a time loop story to become monotonous and repetitive, but this episode actually kept it fresh and funny. In fact, this has one of the classic funny scenes in the entire SG-1 show, where O'Neill talks about how repeating the same day over and over again is causing him to go wacko, where he draws a smiley face with ketchup and mustard on a plate, followed by an amazing montage of O'Neill and Teal'c doing a bunch of crazy shit because there are no consequences to their actions. It was such a great use of the time loop story that really utilized the best of the characters of SG-1. And no, it has nothing to do with fucking Groundhog's Day. I'm so sick of people always mentioning that movie. It does not have a monopoly on the whole time loop genre. Anyway, a really great episode in its own right and truly unique. And my number one favorite episode of Stargate SG-1 is The Lost City. The 7th season 2-hour finale that was a truly epic tale of adventure, and the one where SG-1 was at its absolute best. Anubis makes his run on Earth to conquer it as O'Neill once again gets the depository of knowledge from the ancient device, which Daniel believes is the key to defeating Anubis by finding the Lost City. While at the same time, the political environment changes with a new president who replaces General Hammond with a civilian Dr. Elizabeth Weir, whom Senator Kinsey tries to maneuver to shut down SG-1, but luckily she listens to reason and backs them up, leading to an intense, suspenseful scene where SG-1 discovers the location of an ancient weapon capable of defeating Anubis in Antarctica, and the most epic battle the show has ever done, as Anubis's forces clash with Prometheus and the group of F-302 fighters over Antarctica, as SG-1 struggles to make it to the device that destroys Anubis once and for all. Although Anubis was kind of a cliched evil villain, he was, in my opinion, the best villain the show has ever had, as unlike villains like Apophis or Sokar, he was really intimidating and felt that he was too powerful to ever be defeated. So getting this epic adventure to defeat him, which by the way they were building up to all season, paid off amazingly well. Not only that, but the way they called back to older episodes by bringing in the ancient depository back into play and making it a major plot point was a great callback to what came before. And I could see why they were considering making this the last episode of SG-1, as it would have made a great final episode. But instead, it ended on a cliffhanger where O'Neill's life hanged in the balance, and also set up a spin-off show of Stargate Atlantis nicely by introducing Dr. Weir and leaving them searching for the Lost City, which ended up being Atlantis. This episode was all you could ask for out of a Stargate episode, so overall it wrapped it off really nicely, which is why it is my number one favorite episode of Stargate SG-1. So that's it for my top 10 favorite episodes of Stargate SG-1. Be sure to check back here next week as I do my full review of Stargate SG-1, which I'll leave a link to in the description below once that video is up. And be sure to check out my channel for more episode top 10 videos to come, as well as many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Orphan Black, and more. And be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.